My grandmother was the only parent I ever knew. My real ones were just two strangers who occasionally remembered they had a daughter when it suited them. My parents, Clara and Thomas, never planned for a family. They were artists, or so they called themselves, chasing inspiration and a bohemian lifestyle across Europe. A child was seen as an anchor, something that would sink their creative ship. My mother, Clara, held this belief fiercely for years. But time has a way of shifting perspectives. As she approached her late 30s, she saw her circle of friends settling down, their lives filling with a different kind of creation. Families. A quiet panic set in. She began to fear a future regret, an emptiness where a legacy should be. She started to whisper to Thomas about maybe, just maybe, having one child. Thomas was horrified. He saw it as a betrayal of everything they stood for: freedom, art, spontaneity. A baby was a permanent responsibility, a screaming, needy obstacle to the life he loved. Their small apartment in Lisbon became a battleground of hissed arguments and tense silences. Clara, torn between her own deep-seated doubts and a burgeoning societal pressure, pushed harder. Thomas, feeling trapped and cornered, resisted. The fights were endless, draining the color from their already tumultuous relationship. Eventually, Thomas surrendered, not with joy, not with anticipation, but with the weary resignation of a man who chooses peace over principle. His agreement came with a heavy, unspoken condition. He would not participate. And so, I was conceived out of exhaustion, not love. The reality of me was a shock my mother was entirely unprepared for. The romantic notion of a cooing, photogenic infant collided brutally with the relentless, exhausting truth. She hated the midnight feedings, the constant diaper changes, the smell of baby formula. She despised the way her body had changed and how her time was no longer her own. My father, true to his word, was a ghost. He would leave for days on inspiration trips, leaving Clara alone with a baby she resented. Her solution was to pass me along. Her mother, my Grandma Rosa, lived in a small town in the north of Portugal, and to her I was sent for short visits that stretched into weeks. My aunt, Isabel, Clara's younger sister, also took me in frequently. I became a temporary fixture in their homes, a quiet burden they shouldered without complaint. To me, however, they were not temporary. They were my world. Grandma Rosa's small house with its sun-drenched kitchen and the smell of baking bread, and Aunt Isabel's lively apartment in Porto, where my two boy cousins treated me like a little sister. These were my anchors. I grew up believing this was normal. My parents were like distant, glamorous relatives who would swoop in unpredictably, smelling of unfamiliar cities and bringing exotic, impersonal gifts. They would stay for a tense afternoon, my mother's smile strained, my father's eyes always scanning the room for an exit. Then they would vanish again for months, sometimes a year. I learned not to expect them. I learned to find comfort in the steady, quiet love of Grandma Rosa, who read to me every night, and the boisterous affection of Aunt Isabel, who always made sure I had a new dress for my birthday. For 10 years, this was my life. A stable, loving life built by my grandmother and aunt, shadowed by the sporadic, confusing appearances of Clara and Thomas. Then, when I was 11, Grandma Rosa had a severe stroke. Overnight, the cornerstone of my existence was fragile. She needed care herself, not to give it. Aunt Isabel, with 2 growing boys and a demanding job, could not take me in full time. The family crisis forced a confrontation. Isabel cornered my parents, who were between trips in Morocco. She was furious, her voice sharp over a crackling phone line. She told them Rosa had done their job for a decade, and now it was their turn. Thomas refused outright. Clara tried to negotiate, suggesting I stay with Isabel just a little longer, until Rosa recovered. That's when Isabel played her final card. She told them if they did not take me, she would involve social services. She detailed the neglect, the absence, the lack of financial support, the threat of legal repercussions and scandal in their artistic circles was the only language they understood. Reluctantly, bitterly, they agreed. Moving into their Lisbon apartment was like entering a museum of a life I was not part of. Canvases, half-finished sculptures, and photographs of their travels covered every surface. There was no space for a child drawing, no thought given to where I would sleep. They put a cot in a storage room filled with art supplies. The air was thick with their resentment. It was a physical presence, colder than the tile floors. I tried desperately to earn my place. Grandma Rosa had raised me to be self-sufficient, so I was no trouble. I kept my space immaculate. I cooked simple meals for myself. I excelled at school, bringing home perfect grades, hoping for a shred of approval. I offered help, washing brushes, organizing slides, cleaning the dusty studio. My efforts were met with indifference or irritation. My father would look at my school certificate, grunt, and return to his sketchbook. My mother would sometimes stare at me with a strange, detached curiosity, as if trying to decipher how I had appeared in her life. They continued their travels, but now instead of leaving me with family, they left me alone. At 12, 13 years old, I would come home to an empty apartment with a note on the fridge and some money for groceries. The silence was deafening. The loneliness was a hollow ache in my chest. My only lifelines were the weekly calls from Grandma Rosa, whose speech was slow, but whose love was clear, and the parcels from Aunt Isabel containing homemade food and warm socks. By 15, I had accepted the truth. We were not a family. We were cohabitants in a space of mutual toleration. Their relationship, never stable, deteriorated further. Thomas's art wasn't selling. He started drinking. Cheap wine that stained his lips and his temper. Clara grew more distant, lost in her own disappointments. Their fights were volcanic, echoing through the thin walls of the apartment. And always, the eruptions would circle back to me. "This is what you wanted." Thomas would slur, his voice venomous. "Your little experiment. Look at what it's cost us. Our freedom, our money, our peace. Don't you put this all on me." Clara would shriek back. "You agreed. I'm living with my mistake every single day." I would curl into a ball on my narrow bed, pillows over my ears, trying to block out the sound of my own existence being used as a weapon. I wasn't a person to them. I was a point of contention, a living regret. On the morning of my 16th birthday, they called me into the main room. Their bags were packed, sitting by the door. They looked at me, not with birthday warmth, but with the resolve of people finalizing a business transaction. Thomas spoke first. "We're leaving, Nina. We've sold the lease. We're moving to Bali." The words hung in the air. Clara continued, her tone pragmatic. "Your grandmother is doing much better now. You'll go back to live with her. We've left some money with her for your expenses. It's for the best. We can't live like this anymore. You'll be happier there." The sheer, breathtaking selfishness of it left me speechless. They were dumping me, again, on a woman who had just recovered from a major illness, so they could run away to a tropical island. When I found my voice, it was trembling with anger. "You're leaving Grandma Rosa to clean up your mess? Again? After everything? You're a young woman now," Thomas said dismissively. "You can help her. It will be good for both of you." There was no discussion. It was a decree. A week later, I was on a train back to North, my small suitcase beside me, watching the city where I'd been so unhappy recede into the distance. I felt a crushing mix of relief and profound abandonment. Life with Grandma Rosa was a return to sanity. Her health was fragile, but her spirit was strong. We fell into a gentle rhythm. I attended the local school, helped her with the house and garden, and found a quiet peace I had never known in Lisbon. Aunt Isabel and my cousins were a constant, cheerful presence. For 2 years, I healed. I finished school with top marks and won a scholarship to study literature at the University of Coimbra. I had a future, built not by, but in spite of Clara and Thomas. They disappeared completely. No calls, no letters, not a word when I graduated secondary school. Through the sparse trail of mutual acquaintances, I heard they were in Bali, then Cambodia, living the artist life. I would sometimes, in moments of morbid curiosity, find Clara's sparse social media, pictures of sunsets, gallery openings, the two of them smiling on beaches, eternally young and unencumbered. I was a ghost in their past, thoroughly erased. Then, last month, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I answered, and the voice, after a pause, was unmistakably Clara's. "Nina? It's your mother." The sound of that word on her lips felt like a violation. I said nothing. "We're back. In Portugal. We're in Porto. We need to see you." "Why?" The question was automatic, blunt. She sounded offended. "Why?" "Because we're your parents." "Is it so strange you want to see our daughter?" A harsh laugh escaped me. "Yes, it is. It's the strangest thing I've heard in years. You haven't wanted to see your daughter for the last 19 years. What changed?" She brushed past my words. We've realized a lot of things. We want to reconnect. We're staying at the Hotel de Bolsa. Please come tomorrow." I told her no. I told her it was far too late for reunions, that the daughter they might have wanted to know no longer existed. She pleaded, her voice taking on a strained, desperate edge that didn't match the casual cruelty of our history. I ended the call, my hands shaking. I immediately phoned Grandma Rosa and Aunt Isabel. They were as wary as I was. "Crocodile tears," Rosa said, her old voice firm. "They want something." For 2 weeks, the calls and messages persisted, growing more insistent. Then Thomas texted, "Your mother is heartbroken. Have you no respect?" The gall of it, the absolute rewriting of history, solidified my resolve. I agreed to a meeting, but on my terms. I chose a public cafe in Coimbra and insisted my grandmother and aunt come with me. The moment they walked in, I saw the change. The bohemian glamour was gone. Thomas looked gaunt, his skin a sickly yellow against his white hair. Clara seemed shrunken, her eyes darting nervously. The sight of my backup team clearly unnerved them. After stiff greetings, I didn't offer him a chair. "You have 5 minutes. What do you want from me?" Clara started with a script they prepared. "We missed you. We're getting older. We see things differently now." "Stop," I interrupted. "The truth, or we leave." Thomas looked at Clara, then down at his hands. The defiance was gone, replaced by a palpable fear. "I'm sick," he said, his voice raspy. "Very sick. My liver is failing." We were in Southeast Asia. The treatment was cheap, but it wasn't enough. "We've come back because I need a transplant. The wait list is too long." He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw not love, but terrible, calculating hope. Clara took over, her words tumbling out. "We've spent everything. All our savings, everything from the apartment sale. We have nothing left. We need help, Nina. You're our family. You could get tested to see if you're a match for a living donation. A piece of your liver can regenerate. They said it's possible." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. The noise of the cafe faded. All those years of silence, of neglect, of being told I ruined their lives, culminating in this request. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a spare part. Grandma Rosa was on her feet first, her cane tapping angrily on the floor. "You monstrous people. You throw this child away like rubbish, and now you come crawling back to carve her up? For him? You have no shame." Aunt Isabel's face was flushed with rage. "You have got to be the most selfish, vile humans I have ever known. You don't get to do this. You don't get to use her." Clara's composure shattered. She turned on me, her desperation twisting into fury. "Yes, I regretted having you. Every single day. But you're here now, and you can finally do something useful. This is what children are for, to help their parents when they're in need. He will die without this. Are you going to let your own father die?" Her words hung in the air, a perfect, poisonous summary of everything I meant to them. A tool, an insurance policy. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. I looked at Thomas. "You told me my birth ruined your life. You told me I destroyed your marriage. You left me alone. You made me feel invisible for 16 years. You have no idea who I am. You are not my father. You are a stranger with medical need." I turned to Clara. "And you are not my mother. Giving birth does not make you a parent. It does not give you ownership of my body or my life. You chose your life with him, freely and repeatedly, over me. Now you can live with that choice." Thomas tried one last pathetic gambit. He forced tears into his eyes. "Please, Nina, I have no one else. My parents are gone. I have no siblings. You are my only chance. If you do this, I could be a real father to you. Finally, if you say no, you'll have my death on your conscience." The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost pitiful. "Your death," I said slowly, "will be on your own conscience, and on hers, not mine. You lived exactly the life you wanted. The consequences are yours to bear." We left them there, at the table, their hope turning to ashes. I blocked their numbers that very night. I heard nothing more. Aunt Isabel later told me, through a fraught channel of communication, that they tried to find me at the university, but were warned off by campus security after she made a preemptive call. 7 months passed. I immersed myself in my studies, in the quiet joys of my life with my real family. Then this morning, Aunt Isabel called, her voice subdued. "Nina, it's Thomas. He's gone. The funeral is in Porto the day after tomorrow. Clara is there, of course." I thanked her for telling me. She asked if I would go. "No," I said, and the word felt final, absolute. I said my goodbyes to him a long time ago. After hanging up, I felt a strange emptiness, but not grief. I mourned not for the man who died, but for the father I never had, for the little girl who once waited by a window for parents who never came. The ghost of that longing finally laid to rest. Clara, somewhere out there, is alone with her regrets and her blame. But her voice is silent in my world, and that silence now is a peaceful one. My family is here, in this house, in this town. They always were.